Hello, my name's Hazel and I would very much like to introduce my dad to you. This is William Gerald Martin, and I'm very proud of my dad. I'll just put that on one side for the moment. I'll just tell you my dad's story. Dad lived at home with a lot of input. He had got a dementia diagnosis. He loved his grandchildren, he loved his children, his grandchildren. He loved watching the funnies on the television, you know, the Last of the Summer Wine and things like that. And he loved socialising. And he was a proper black country gent, and he got a brilliant sense of humour. Right, so following a couple of falls, we, with great reluctance, realised it was time for Dad to go in a nursing home. We chose, because of the locality and because of a little bit of reputation, what we'd heard about it, that it was okay. But it was the locality mainly. It was on the same road as my dad lived, and it was a good locality for a family to visit. So with very heavy hearts, we entrusted Dad to, at 11 o'clock on Saturday, just in July, towards the end of July. Right, so we made the appointment. I was there, my sister Diane and my brother was there, and we took Dad to the nursing home. We were met by a senior nurse, the nurse that was on duty, and a senior care assistant. So we made the room as homely as we could, with Dad's bits and pieces, his favourite clock, his favourite teddy, his photographs, and we did a handover with the nurse and the senior care. At this point, Dad was in very good spirits. He was laughing and joking with the nurses, and that was just Dad's way. So we handed over Dad's likes and dislikes to the nurses, and then we actually stayed there till 1 o'clock, and then on that they brought Dad's lunch down, which was a hearty plate of food right up my dad's street. So he's tucking into his lunch. So we thought, as a family, this might be a good time for us just to back away and to leave Dad. So as the day progressed, my sister and her husband went to visit Dad between 6 and 7 in the evening. And he was fine, you know, reasonable spirits. He was sitting in the chair when my sister left, and the nurse was aware, because she'd gone to find sheets to put clean sheets on the bed. And then that was it. We didn't hear any more until my brother went to visit the next morning at around 12ish. Right, my brother was kept waiting outside the room because the carers were with Dad, but my brother could hear my dad screaming. Not shouting, not complaining, actually screaming. So anyway, the carers did what they did, and my brother was very upset, and the nurse assured him that she had sent for a doctor. So, and she also informed him that on 8:15 in the evening, on the same day that Dad had got in, on the Saturday, Dad was on the floor. So they'd scooped him up and put him back into bed. Right, so then I wasn't around at the time. I got home as soon as I could, and by 4 o'clock I was at the nursing home with my dad. My dad was virtually out of it. He'd got no clothes on except a continence pad. The fan was on him and he was clammy. Now, my dad will have a blanket over him at 23 degrees with the central heating on. So this wasn't my dad. So I was trying to speak to him, and he wasn't really able to answer. I just kept offering him sips of water, and that was how the afternoon was going. So when the nurse came in the room, I did say, do you think we need to, hurry the doctor up if possible, or an ambulance? She reassured me that she was trained, lots of experience, and she didn't think he needed an ambulance. So time went on. 6:30, no doctor. I phoned my sister to urge her to try to get through to 111 to see what was happening. Anyway, by 7:30, the nurse came back in the room and explained she'd triaged my dad with the doctor, and the doctor was going to send an ambulance, but it may be a 2-hour wait. Well, within 10 minutes, there was a screech of blue lights around the home. And I thought, well, is that for Dad? So it was for Dad, and it was fast response from Stoke. So they came and did all their observations on Dad and found he was marking 10 for sepsis. So they called, the care assistant came in to change Dad's continence pad, and they went to move him at his leg, and Dad screamed. So the paramedics had to stop the staff from doing that, and they gave Dad IV antibiotics. They said Dad would have to be taken into the hospital, so another crew was sent for. So the paramedics questioned the nurse in charge and said, what position was he found in on the floor on the Saturday night? And she said, I don't know. And then they said, well, how did you get him up off the floor? And she said, I didn't know. She didn't offer to go and refer to any notes or speak to any other staff. That was her reply. Well, it transpired that Dad had fractured his neck of femur. And anyone who knows anything about medical things, it can be a death knell for a person of 92 years old with especially with Alzheimer's as well. So all in all then, so Dad fell on the floor at 8:15. He was scooped up in a hoist, and he was put back into bed, and he didn't receive medical attention until 8:15 the next day. That's 24 hours without pain relief, with insufficient OBS, and basically just a lack of care. So my Dad was 24 hours without any pain relief at all before he reached, and he was given IV paracetamol by the paramedics. So as a result, we did complain to the home. We sent many emails backwards and forwards asking them about their policies and procedures, and why hadn't they phoned us when Dad was on the floor? Why didn't they phone an ambulance when Dad was on the floor? He was taking blood thinners as well. We felt that our questions were somewhat fobbed off and not really taken that seriously. So we continued pursuing answers, and obviously we don't want this to happen to anybody else. So we eventually went to the Health and Social Care Ombudsman. We do have a final decision from the Health and the Ombudsman, and the bottom line is that they have decided that the provider justice. We feel that their actions or lack of action actually accelerated my Dad's death, basically. And if I'll just show you another photograph now of how Dad was just a few months after his accident and a few weeks before he died. There he is, still trying to smile. Bedbound for the rest of his life from July, never got out of bed again. Never got to, the little nursing home with the roses round the door that we wanted for him, or to socialise. And this was a few days, probably about a week before he died.